Welcome to episode 2 of the San Diego Prep Insider Football Podcast in the lab. All right, Chris, this is the lab. Today we've got our top 5 players at each position, regardless of class. So finally, I know a lot of the underclassmen guys felt slighted, like they weren't included in the top 50 list. This is your chance to get recognized here, and we will start with the quarterbacks. What are your thoughts on each other's list and your own list? I guess, Christian, we'll go with you.
Well, I think it's kind of a universal that Braxton Burmeister is up there. There's a lot of similar names on all this, so not a hard group to cut through to the core of like who needs to be up there. But it's always interesting. The preseason, there's a little bit of differences, and that's why you play the game.
So Chris, you have Rodney Thompson on there. Not all of us have that. So make a case for Rodney. Why should Rodney be number 5?
Rodney plays for Saints, number 1. He's a dynamic quarterback. He's fast, he's quick, he's elusive. He's got one of the strongest arms in the county. Rodney's a baller. Bottom line, that's why I think he should definitely be on the list.
And Montell, you have one little difference in there too. You got a couple guys in there that are different. So you got
I just got Posada in there, and I think that Posada again, state, last year, proven guy. He when he has the weapons there, he can obviously work with them very, very well. I think he's got that senior leadership, and I think he's going to be playing with a chip on the shoulder this year. He's not getting the recruiting respect that I think he deserves and he hasn't gotten yet. So I think that's just going to make him just that much more of a player that wants to dominate and take over. So I ranked him in my top 5.
And are there any guys that we didn't? 5 is not a lot. So are there any guys you want to mention before we jump to running back?
I do. First of all, I just want to tell the quarterbacks out there, this is one of the best recruiting quarterback classes we've had in years. I want to give a couple honorable mentions out. Obviously, Anthony Posada from Bonita Vista. You've got Christian Zamudio down at Otay Ranch. You've got Casey Granforce making the transition from wide receiver over to quarterback this year. I think he's going to have a big year for University City. And a guy I like that's really low-key under the radar, Rancho Buena Vista's Ace Roach.
Yes, he's a guy to look out for. Has the D1 size, D1 arm. Just been playing on a team that just hasn't got over that hump yet. I think he's going to make a lot of waves in the recruiting world.
Well, he's somebody who's kind of playing with house money, if you will, because he doesn't have necessarily gotta compete to this level of play. He just can go out there and sling the ball around a little bit and have some fun this season.
So he has to obviously, for them to be able to be successful. And I think on mine, honorable mention guys are guys that I didn't mention were underclassmen. I kind of went with the whole senior list to give the class of 2017 that much love. But obviously Tuttle, you're the guy. You know that you're going to be the man going into next year. But I think this, like you said, probably the best class. Tanner also at LCC, great player. I think he deserves to be on the honorable mention list as well.
All right, guys, we'll move to running backs now. We'll take a look at all of our lists as those come up on the screen right now. Guys, pretty much everyone's got the same 2, C.J. Verdell, Eric Buchanan. Then it starts to become a little bit different. So, Chris, we'll start with you in your list. You got one guy on there that I don't have, Christian doesn't have him. Explain to me Sean Puma.
Sean Puma is a sophomore for Cathedral Catholic. He is a phenomenal athlete, track star in both the shot put and discus. And with the running game the Cathedral's putting together this year, and the fact that he went to Nike Spark Combine last year and ran a sub 4.5 in the 40, scored I think it was a 109 as a freshman. He had the highest West Coast score for a freshman in the entire Nike Spark Combine. I don't think anybody sees this kid coming. I don't think they're ready for his speed or the athleticism with that line that he has in front of him.
The Puma. Montell, what about your list? You got some different guys at the bottom.
Yeah, if anyone knows me, they know I'm an Adelman fan at Poway. I love the kid. The kid reminds me of Trayvon Van at Helix back in the day. Real similar type, very long body, 6'1", 180 guy, deadly in open field, as we saw in the Nike Spark Camp. You know what he did to one of our guys that he made. He made a pretty good highlight for himself. But I think he's just one of those guys that he's a breakaway speed. He does so much for that team. He can catch out of the backfield. He has that long stride, being so tall. I can see why Montana's so high on him right now. They're trying to land him right now. I think he's just a great player. And then I like the big bruiser Micah Edwards over at Lincoln. I think that Micah has a tremendous upswing. I think if Lincoln's O-line can hold up, Micah can show his true potential and be able to, do what he does in open field, break tackles and all that stuff. And I have one honorable mention guy. I like Johnson over at Valhalla, but Johnson doesn't make my list, and this is the reason why he doesn't make my list. He doesn't look angry enough right now for his size. He's a guy that's big. He shows flashes of it, but he has to become an angry blocker, runner, catching on the backfield. Once he does that, I think he could be on all of our top 5 lists. But he's a guy that honorable mention, I think, for us to look out for.
Yeah, and he was the guy who was also on the cusp of our SDPI top 50. He was an honorable mention for that as well. Christian, you and I both have Khalil Spurl. You have AJ Leonard as well, who none of us have actually. So talk a little bit about those guys.
Well, I like the concept of a downhill runner, and you're talking about angry physical guys.
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking at this running back list, I wasn't just looking at production. I was also looking at blocking, looking at physicality, just not being afraid to contribute in all realms of that. That's what I see in these guys. You know, Spurl and Leonard might not put up the highlight type numbers, might not break ankles out in the open field, might not, put people to rest in peace status, but they're going to be the kind of guys that when you really look at how is Westview so successful this season, it's because their running game set up their passing game. How is Mar Vista so successful? Because they have a well-rounded guy who doesn't fumble the ball, who doesn't turn things over. So that's why I added them, and then those top three are going to be the guys that do both of those. They're going to produce 2,000 yards of offense and make the blocks.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so those guys in the backfield, and now the flashy, the divas, the wide receivers. Let's get to our top 5 wide receivers right now. Let's take a look at our list. So here is our receivers list. Guys, this one has probably most variation of all the Montell. We'll start with you. Some of the guys on your list that weren't on others.
Dominic Swivel, a guy that said Patrick Henry, big physical receiver. Reminds me of he's just a big guy, man, that can run the ball. He's physical when he plays the ball. I think he can be one of the best if they had a really good quarterback, and I think the new scheme coming in Patrick Henry, hopefully they look to get him the ball more. But he's obviously, a Division I prospect. I know San Jose State's already offered him, and I think more will come down the way. Devin Lloyd is another guy. I like the big kind of receivers. Those guys are D1 ready. Devin Lloyd he's got it all. Nevada Reno was all over him at the Arizona camp. They were even talking about if he could play tight end or whatever because of his size is so big. He's able to probably line up in 2 positions, either being a tight end and be able to flex out, or being a straight wide receiver and be able to catch the ball out there. An X receiver and be able to go one-on-one with corners. I think he's a red zone nightmare for most guys. And those 2 guys are pretty much the best. On my list are kind of variation, but Sullivan, number 1, his production from last year is really, really great.
Christian, your list is pretty much the same as us.
I got a couple of differences though, and I just want to say that Montell, where you pick the red zone physical threat guys that can force their own, I love the speed. Mm-hmm. I love the elusive deep ball threats that let the running take care of the red zone.
Gotcha.
So Chris, you got one guy in there that no one has, Christian Baker.
Oh man, this kid's dynamic. First of all, he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the county, playing up there at Rancho Bernardo. I think with the running game with Rancho Bernardo with Milan Rice, a lot of teams are going to stack the box, and I think the Salazar is going to light them up in the sky. So I'm looking for big production on Christian Baker. I think he's super underrated. I think he should definitely have more offers from colleges. He's fast, he's long, he plays tall. Kid's a fantastic receiver.
Yeah, and can't argue with that. Some of my guys want to shout out all those dudes at Cathedral. They all play receiver, but they kind of get stuck in that running offense. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to say, I don't need to say all their names. Y'all know who you are. But yeah, a lot of good receivers in San Diego. It's really tough to make that list, cutting it down to 5. All right, let's go from the receivers and bump it on in close to the line of scrimmage. The tight ends. Here are our tight ends. We only did 3 because not as many tight ends out there in the county. We all pretty much have the same 3 guys. Patrick Brown. I got Gadinas at 2, and then Caleb Phillips for the combination of those 3. With a bonus pick from you, Chris, Jalen Arnold.
Jalen Arnold, kid from Helix High School. He actually transferred from quarterback and moved positions over now to tight end.
No big deal.
Not a big change, right? So a lot of people thought he was going to struggle with that transition. We saw him at the Western New Mexico camp. He did phenomenal. He looked great. He even got a college offer from Hastings College on the spot. I like Jalen Arnold, especially in Coach O's offense. I think he's really, really underrated. And with all the speed and everything on the outside, I think people are going to forget about him right there on the edge of that line.
And Montell, we all had trouble making this list. Who's number 1 is number 2. Explain the 1 and 2 guys because it's hard to differentiate.
Yeah, I call them both 1s. Patrick Brown and Caleb Phillips are both, I think, the top tight ends in the county, and they're different. They're extremely different. Brown is a nice big bruising tight end. Reminds you of a guy that can block really, really well. He can do the finesse things, maybe catch the short routes and everything. Casey Phillips is like Gates almost in the offense. He's very great route running as a tight end. He's not as big, as physical, but as far as an offensive threat for a quarterback, he's obviously the best route runner we got at tight end. Obviously, I think he can even flex out the receiver and cause a mismatch with cornerbacks. I know Santa Fe Christian doesn't offenses do that much, but for offenses similar to Cathedral's, he catches so many more balls than Patrick Brown does. I mean, he's catching 45, 50 balls a year, where Brown's maybe catching, about, I think he's like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Which is a huge difference for me. That's why I think they're both number one. They just both bring different things to the table. That's why they're both being heavily recruited, I think, right now. And then also I like Casey from La Jolla. I can't remember. Yeah, last name Mariucci. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. Yeah, Mooch. I think he's a very underrated tight end. I think he does a lot of the same things as Casey Phillips does. He can flex out in a lot of different positions, catch the ball. He's a very better route runner than people think, and he's faster than what people think as well when he catches the ball. He accelerates because he's so tall and he can move. I think he's the guy you got to watch out. I think he's Braxton's number one and number two target out there. La Jolla, catch your day. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year as well.
All right, cool. Now let's move to the most important position on the field. And because it's so important, a lot of these kids play on both sides of the ball, so we didn't think it'd be fair to do offensive line and defensive line. So we're calling out a hog list. So here's just all the linemen. There's 10 of them that we think are our top 10. Guys, we all pretty much have the same 10 guys, or anyone you want to pinpoint out in your list to bring more attention to.
For me, there's two guys that actually stand out on this list. Obviously, JoJo Fallo. JoJo Fallo is the number one offensive lineman, in my opinion, in San Diego County. He's fast, he's physical, he's big. Last year, he played under the shadow of David. This year, it's his time to shine. I think he's going to dominate on both sides of the ball. And the other kid I really think that is underrated in San Diego, obviously I gave him a shout out last week, is Jonathan Stein. Jonathan's got size to play Mike linebacker, but because Christian's a smaller school, they put him on the offensive line. He's one of the most athletic big men we have in San Diego. And the third guy that I want to talk about is probably the most athletic lineman in San Diego County, and that's Blake De La Rosa. I got to tell you, I saw this kid in a private workout at AJ Sports and Fitness. I've never seen a lineman move like this kid. He was doing ladder work and shuttles like I've never seen a lineman be able to do. He's got the fastest feet and some of the fastest hands in San Diego County as a lineman.
Yeah, I think Blake's, if he was 2 inches taller, every Division I in the county would be all over him.
I think they should still be all over him.
I mean,
okay.
we can't fight that, the attribute thing. I think he's probably one of the most dominant linemen we're going to have this year. Probably one of the best D linemen, it'd be between him and Daniel Anderson, and Bishops, who's also another dominant lineman. But the guy I like to mention is El Camino's Malu Tumua. I think that's how I pronounce it. I hope I didn't hash your name up. This kid, last year, he did very, very well, but he wasn't so big on the radar. I think last year they had him listed at maybe 6'1", 215. We saw him in Arizona camp. He's 6'4", 245 now at DN, and
That's big.
And as far as athleticism, he was by far probably the most athletic guy that was out there with the D lineman, and he showed what he could do. I think this kid is a guy he's way in the round of school because he didn't do very much last year. This year, I guarantee he'll be an impact player for El Camino on their defense, and I think he'll be a Division I recruit.
Christian, anyone you want to point out?
What, less than maybe specifically pointing out one person, I just kind of want to point out the general trend of we have a lot of different schools on here. We all generally have the same list, but we got South Bay schools, we got North County schools, we got city schools, and to me that's really interesting because linemen sometimes can be hard to differentiate on a highlight tape of it's a pulling guard is a pulling guard is a pulling guard, but at the same time we got a bunch of different scenarios here between Daniel Anderson at Bishops, Dominic Godino at Oceanside. As we said, Jonathan Stein at Christian, that guys could be huge impact players and really change the fortunes of a team almost single-handedly. That at the same time, we just won't see it happening live because you'll be focused on the ball. So it'll be interesting to watch.
I think the interesting thing is though they're all at different levels. I know we have the stigma in San Diego. You play Division I or Division 5 or Division Open, and you're supposed to be the better player because you play at those levels. I think that platform has changed a little bit because we have guys like Daniel Anderson that's a Division III at Bishops, and I know for a fact he can go to any team and go start in the county, period. No doubt. I think Stein can go to any other team and go start in the county, playing at these smaller schools if they went to those bigger schools. So I think the platform is changing with that. I think the D-line and the lines are buying into it, and we're getting dominant players from all different levels.
Well, hopefully that'll raise the across the board level of play, and so that's what excites me about this list is that it's not centered around Torrey Pines, Saints, Cathedral, Mater Dei.
Yeah.
And that's it for the line.
Yeah.
It's an eclectic list.
Right. And so now that we've done this, we've successfully transitioned to the defensive side of the ball. That was a nice little segue. Very creative of us. Bumping back from the line to the linebackers. All right, so here's a look at our top 5 linebackers. And I'm going to start with this because right away there is one very glaring discrepancy with our number ones. And Chris, you have Someone else there. So would you like to just go over your list?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me go over this real quick. Let me say this. No disrespect to Samson Newell, no disrespect to Madison, the linebacking core, Coach Jackson, anybody at Madison. Okay, but Ezekiel Noah is the returning defensive player of the year.
Yep.
He does have. He's got a motor that won't stop. A lot of people say they pick Samson over Zeke simply because of his height. Zeke's an animal. He's a leader of that defense. He's taking that defense on. Last year he played underrated under Jahad Woods. This year he's taking a step up. This is his defense. He's making it a mission to show everybody that he is the defensive player of the year, and in my opinion, he's gonna repeat as the defensive player of the year. So went out on a limb and I said, actually, I think Zeke is a better linebacker.
I won't even argue with it. I think you hit all the points. I think Zeke is one of the top players. I mean, he is the top player or one of the top players, him and New. I got 1 and 2 because we had to pick 1 or 2, and I picked Samson above him. And the reason I did pick Samson is because of some of the things that Samson brings to the table. Speed. He's great laterally across the field. He's not a punishing hitter, but he's a great tackler for that team. And I do think you did hit a point. Zeke has been able to play. Zeke has been able to play in a defense that wasn't built around him and still dominate. Where Madison's built their defense around Samson. So everything goes to Samson. Samson's supposed to make all the tackles. Everything's supposed to filter into Samson. And that's credit to Samson's defensive coordinator and Rick Jackson. Zeke was not that person last year. Everything was built around going to Jahad Wood. Everything was built about going to Forrest Haley. And Zeke's still able to shine. Very much so. And I didn't even look at it from that aspect point. I think you made a great point. And, they're both going to be Division I players. They're both going to be awesome. I think they're both going to be doing dynamic things. But those guys right there is Alpha 1, Alpha 1, 1.2. It's really no. I think you're gonna be able to make an argument for either one. Who's number 1? Who's number 2? That's why they're on the cover of the magazine. It's the NFL magazine. That's why they're both rated number 1 and number 2 in the state. That's why they're both rated in the country as the best linebackers. That's why they're both been highly recruited, not only by Pac-12 schools but by Big Ten and SEC and so on and so on. I think those guys have set the tone of a linebacker in our county to a whole nother level. We never had that in San Diego before. So that's a tribute to those two guys.
One thing I want to add about Zeke is he's got an offer from the University of Illinois.
Yep.
Lovie Smith, former NFL head coach. Hardy Nickerson had a personal conversation with him. Hardy Nickerson's an NFL Hall of Famer as linebacker, one of the greatest that all ever played the game, and he's really high on Zeke.
Yeah, Zeke's actually his number one. I think it's his number 1 recruit. His is only linebacker recruit out of California, and I think it's number 1 on his list as far as overall. Speaking for Zeke, and then Samson's already.
That says a lot, Christian. I know you want to talk about number 3 on your list, another Madison linebacker.
No, I think I might be a little bit entrenched in the whole Madison thing right now because of having spent training camp with them, which, by the way, you can see on The Grind on SD Prep Insider premiering August 25th.
Remember to watch it.
Remember to watch it. Or don't, either way. I think that it's interesting that a lot of the talk has been who was the defense built around, but I kind of don't give really much credit to that notion. Because, offense, yes, you can build it around, the ball has to go to a guy. Defense, it comes down to who's going to sniff it out and who's going to have that reflex. Also, you can.
Tom, I was a defensive coordinator.
I mean, yes, you can force it towards let's funnel the guy inside and make the linebacker get the play. Let's get it out. But ultimately, the best guys are just going to force their way in there. They're going to stick their nose in everybody's business, and sometimes that just means disrupting the run because you have a double team, and sometimes that means just putting some pressure on the passer so that you force an interception. Those kind of plays, and that's what I see out of Samson and Bryson is that they are the terrible twosome of just getting after quarterbacks and disrupting things. So yes, Zeke might be a little bit better in terms of getting the organized defensive calls and getting the plays directed to him and making the star tackles, but these Madison linebackers, they're relentless, and they're the kind of guys that at the end of the game, I feel like every offensive player is going to be like, dude, just go away. Just stop bugging me for one play. Please.
I think they said that about Zeke by himself.
And before we get to the secondary, I just want one thing from you, Christian. Can you please say number 5 on your list?
Famama Luifi from El Cajon Valley. That's my man right there. He's a little under the radar maybe, and I might be going out on a limb to put him on that list, but you watch his lateral speed this year, he's going to help keep El Cajon Valley in some games.
I just want to hear you say his name.
Well, you know, before we move on from linebacker, there's one guy on this list that I think is low-key underrated on that Madison linebacking core. First of all, I want to say I think they got the best linebacking core in San Diego County. By far, I mean, they are above and beyond everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I think the most underrated kid on that list, as on my list, is Chris Fatulua. The
sophomore, right?
The sophomore. No, he's going to his junior year this year.
Yeah.
You know, in May he lost his mom, unfortunately, to cancer, and it's been a rough time for him. But that kid is lights out, one of the best football players in San Diego County, and I think the sky's the limit for that kid.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say he's somebody who last year lost some of his time at linebacker because he was spending all of his energy and effort playing offensive line. So he's somebody that you just look at the plug and chug method that the coaches treat him with, and that kind of scares you a little bit. That wow, this kid is just starting his junior year.
That's why Madison's a monster. You know, they got a monster. But I think some other guys that we got to mention is obviously Bishop's Justin Woodley, and then Ryan Luricki. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I'm sorry, guys. I chop names up all the time. I think those two guys at the Division III up at this level that they are right now, playing for those private schools, are putting up phenomenal numbers and are two of the best linebackers in the county.
Yeah, and Ryan had the most tackles.
Yeah, Ryan led the lead the county. I mean, anybody that's getting 12 to 13 to 14 tackles a game, you're a legitimate baller.
Or a great defensive coordinator.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
And I'm glad you bring up Woodley because just looking at our previous list, we had Daniel Anderson up there. You start looking at that. There's multiple tiers of that Bishop's defense that are on this list. It makes you really go, wow, this could be a team that not just wins a lot of games this season, but wins a lot of games of like keeping opponents to under 2 touchdowns.
Absolutely.
So a lot of interesting stuff. A lot of interesting stuff to watch there.
All right, so time to get to our final position of the podcast. It's the secondary. Here's a look at our top 5 players at that position. We got a bunch of names out there. These are probably the lists that look the most dissimilar. So, Chris, we'll start with you. A couple guys on your list that weren't on others.
The first 3 that we got, obviously bigger names with Saints and Helix, and they're kind of consistent across our board. But yeah, we throw in Anthony Portello from Valhalla. He's a hitter and an athlete, and I like the combination of that. Sometimes you get guys in the secondary who can cover really well, but are maybe a little timid and going up to knock someone out. But yeah, Portello is not, and he
got to play for USA Football, which is pretty cool.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, mention that.
And then on top of that, another guy who almost runs too aggressively downhill is Isaiah McDaniels at Madison. Got to see him a lot on the grind, which would be on his SD Prep Insider. But this kid was to the point where the coaches were pulling him out of drills, being like, "You got to stop knocking people out."
This is a kid where if you put a giant truck in the opponent's uniform, he would run full speed into it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, on the first day of contact, he was coming out bloodied because he was like, I was hitting people too hard and didn't have everything strapped up. Like, the kid's just insane. And that's what I love in a DB. Mm-hmm. That's why you don't put him at linebacker, because he'd be a little scary on making all those reads. But there, and then as I said, those top 3, Tariq, Scott, Isaac. I mean, all these guys are phenomenal. This was a hard list to make. This was pulling teeth.
But yeah, Montell, I know you struggled with yours. We were talking about.
Oh man, I mean, Scotty Young obviously in my list is number 1. I think he's the complete package going to Arizona. Strong guy. Tyree Thomas at number 4 for me. You know, San Diego State, going to San Diego State. I think he's very rangy. I thought last year he was very great as a free safety. Caused a lot of plays. Aziz Hearns, he's a great player. And unfortunately, you know, I know he hasn't got all the love that he deserves, but I think he's just somebody that's really, really good. D'Angelo Gunter over Norte is going to be their shutdown corner, do everything for them, obviously. I got Kyle Moses as one of my honorable mention, and also Larson Boyd still Canyon, the safety over there still Canyon. I think he's very, very good and very, very underrated over there. But I mean, my top 5 are pretty much consistent with everybody else. So, I mean, we have a plug and play here. All of us guys got a plug and play guy that's we're kind of similar or different. But I think the one thing that all these guys bring to the table, they can all cover. And Isaac Taylor, I didn't forget about you, man. I know you're a guy, but I kept my list all senior based on it. So you underclassmen don't be shooting me all those emails or texts that I didn't get you. These are for all my.
You can send them to me and I'll read them.
Yeah, send them to him. Yeah,
I'll read them too.
I got all seniors on my list. So, Chris, what about yourself?
Chris, about your list?
I'll tell you what. You know, I'm a secondaries coach. I'm a D guy. I'm a defensive guy.
Before you even start, I want to just vouch for how difficult this was for Chris, because he was literally like shaking. I could see you were frustrated before we started.
It was like a father trying to pick a favorite child.
It really was. Yeah, it was.
I got a lot of favorites. I mean, the secondary guys, those are my guys. Obviously, you took McDaniels. Isaiah, I couldn't put you on my list this time. No disrespect, you my guy. My list is really heavy with corners because there are so many good receivers this year. I decided to put more corners than safeties on this list. And the corners impressed me this year. I mean, there are the top-notch corners are top-notch corners. These guys aren't knockoffs. The difference between a top-notch corner and an average corner is pretty big this year. There aren't a lot of really great corners out there. Guys like D'Angelo Gunner, Azizi Hearn, by the way, I call him the JUCO receiver because that kid, he looks like a grown man playing corner. He could have played wide receiver, corner, whatever. I think he's actually going to play both sides for Oceanside. And then I got to go with my dude, who I think is the number one cover dude in San Diego. Broke his leg earlier this year. He'll be back for Helix this year, and that's Evan Perkins. Perkins is one of my guys. Got a lot of love for that kid. Hopefully he recovers from his injury because I know he's going to be a big part of that defense for Helix.
Another guy that I know I put a receiver, Keenan Ellis, over there at Bonita Vista, is another guy that's a tremendous athlete at corner. I think he's going, I forgot where he signed or where he's potentially going to sign it. But he's another lockdown corner, like you said. The difference between the guy that can go in there and lock down a person and the guy that can't is there's a big gap between those guys. And the guys that are elite at it, like Taylor, Gunter, and so on and so on, all you guys, those guys are like on a level above everybody else.
Right.
I mean, it's not even like, hey, these guys can play field. They're on another level beyond themselves. I think also Brennan Goring over at La Jolla Country Day. He's also another guy that we kind of overlook because he's such a high motor. But he's another guy that plays the safety spot, the DB, very, very good, very, very instinctive. Height is just a little bit different for him. He's not as tall as the other guys, but he can play. And I think we have a lot of those guys that's coming up.
I think we can all agree cornerback, this is by far the hardest list to put together because there were or defense back, sorry, or whatever you want to call it, secondary, because there were so many good players in this little second. Anything you want to add before we move on from DBs, guys?
I'm excited to have people try and prove us wrong.
Yeah.
I think that if we didn't...
Well, they're going to try.
Yeah, if we didn't get to, it's not that, as they said, it's not that we don't have love for it. These were hard lists to make, and, for those of you that feel slighted, please let us know, not just with your tweets, but with your play, and give us stuff that 5 weeks from now we can be sitting here updating this list, being like, we were straight wrong, and we apologize, and we'll give you your due credit.
Absolutely.
And you guys have something going on this weekend as well. I think you should mention.
We have the Kickoff Classic going on this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Kicks off at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Kickoff Classic is a really big thing because this is a big food drive for us to be able to get back to the community. Just bring a canned good, you get in the games. We kick it off with Sarah versus Mission Bay on Friday, and then the nightcap will be La Jolla Country Day versus Coronado, which are the last two. They both won the championship the last 2 years. I guess the winner of this game will win it again, hopefully. Kind of keep that button head going on right there. And then we go ahead and kick it on into Saturday. We go with Escondido Charter going against Palos Verde. The next game will be Morris versus Imperial. After that, it'll be Lincoln versus El Cap. And then we'll finish off the nightcap with Christian versus Hilltop. So it's going to be a whole slew of weekend of football.
It's back, baby.
Yeah, back-to-back games. All guys have been playing at a high level. I think our game is a little bit different than other ones. It's not a round-robin type thing. This is actually a game-type situation where referees are going to be there, time clock, everything's going. It's like a regular preseason game, and we want to give us that type of environment going into the season and rock and roll with it.
And then next week, guys, everyone's favorite thing. You know what we're going to do next week?
Our picks.
Game picks coming back next week. So we will see you there. We're going to have some preseason awards, some kind of unique preseason awards for you next week as well. So that'll be fun because we can't give the top 10 list because we already did that. Same thing until the game starts. But we will see you next week, and we are excited about that.